Hey everyone, it's your friend Joseph Craven here for the numbers game in Week 10 of the SEC. I'm joined as always by my co-host, the one and only little puppy Radar O'Reilly, currently chowing down on a pig ear that I gave her in order to just calm her down for a little bit and distract her. She is a energetic little pupper, that's for sure. If you're unfamiliar with the numbers game, this is of course where we do just statistics. It's a quick recap of the statistics from the previous week. That scores, the individual statistics, the leaders or the standout performances, the people that are SEC players of the week, so on and so forth. Along with that, we look at rankings and that, SEC conference leaders in different statistical categories. This is basically no opinions, just the raw numbers to catch you up on some of the stuff that you might not be aware of so far on the year. So first and foremost, let's just look at the Week 9. I might have said Week 10 earlier when I meant Week 9. We're going into Week 10. This is the Week 9 scoreboard. Vanderbilt gets their first conference victory, defeating Arkansas 45-31. Georgia holds off Florida in a top 10 matchup, 36-17. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but Georgia able to pull away at the end. It was a very hotly contested contest. Speaking of hotly contested, Kentucky defeats Missouri 15-14 on a last-second touchdown pass that had its share of controversy. Mississippi State upends Texas A&M 28-13. A&M has not notched a victory against the Bulldogs since 2015. And finally, South Carolina gets a field goal in the fourth to defeat Tennessee 27-24. Let's look at the numbers from those games. First up is Vanderbilt and Arkansas. We'll look at the statistical leaders from the losing side first and foremost. Quarterback Ty Storey had returned for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He went 23 of 36 for 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rakeem the Dream Boyd continued a phenomenal season. 19 carries for 113 yards and 1 touchdown. That's a 5.9 yard average. However, it was Chase Hayden who actually had the highlight touchdown run for the Razorbacks, a 38-yard run that gave him a touchdown. He had 5 carries for 70 yards, a 14-yard average. Storey, the quarterback, added 5 carries as well for 24 yards. Through the air, tight end Cheyenne O'Grady had 6 catches for 83 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver LaMichael Petway, 2 catches for 51 yards. Michael Woods added 3 catches for 33 yards. Tyson Morris had 3 catches for 19 yards, one of those being a touchdown for the Razorbacks. On the other side, Vanderbilt was led by their quarterback, Kyle Shermer, only completing 13 of 19 passes, a fairly low amount considering his output on the rest of the season. That was for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns, though, so still a good outing for him, even if he wasn't throwing the ball as often as normal. It was running back Keyshawn Vaughn that really led the Commodores, 26 carries for 172 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is a 6.6 yard per carry average. Kyrie Blasingame also had a decent outing, 10 carries for 46 yards and 1 touchdown. That touchdown came in the fourth to extend the Vanderbilt lead to 45-24. Through the air, no major surprise here. The Commodores were led by their 2 go-to receiving targets. That's tight end Jared Pinkney, who had 5 catches for 93 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Khalija Lipscomb, 4 catches for 44 yards. Kyrie Blasingame, the running back, added 2 catches for 42 yards out of the backfield. That game, of course, Arkansas struck first. Keyshawn Vaughn had a 63-yard touchdown run in the first to tie it back up. And from then on out, it was essentially a Vanderbilt-led game. Only a 21-14 lead at halftime after Arkansas had tied it up. But after that, a 55-yard field goal from Connor Limpert put Arkansas within 5 points, 21-17. Riley Guay, 36-yard field goal in the third, 24-17. And then the fourth quarter, Vanderbilt blew up. Keyshawn Vaughn had an 11-yard touchdown run, and then a 3-yard touchdown run later. And then Kyrie Blasingame added a 5-yard touchdown run. And then late in the game, Cheyenne O'Grady had a touchdown to kind of help the Razorbacks out a little bit more, but it was 45-31 at the end. Let's go to the big-time SEC East matchup. Georgia defeated Florida 36-17. As mentioned, this game was very hotly contested for a long, long time. In fact, in the third quarter, Feliepe Franks connected with Freddie Swain for a 36-yard touchdown pass to put Florida up 14-13. Georgia scored another touchdown just about 3 minutes later to go up 20-14, added a Rodrigo Blankenship field goal, 23-14 at the end of the third, going into the fourth. Hotly contested as Evan McPherson for Florida connected on a 42-yard field goal to make it 23-17. However, with 8.5 minutes to go, Jake Fromm tossed a touchdown pass to Terry Godwin to put Georgia up 29-17, and with about 4.5 to go, DeAndre Swift broke a 33-yard touchdown run to actually put Georgia, to seal the victory for Georgia. But Florida in it for most of the game. Let's look at Florida's stats. Not a great outing for Feliepe Franks, 13 of 21 passing, 105 yards, 1 touchdown, but 1 interception as well. LaMichael Pirine led the way with 14 rushing attempts on 62 yards. Jordan Scarlett, 8 carries, 56 yards. Feliepe Franks added 8 carries for 30 yards and 1 rushing touchdown, the goal line score. As mentioned, Freddie Swain had 2 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was on a 36-yard touchdown pass, so his other reception only for 2 yards. And nothing terribly notable in the receiving stats from then on out. Pair of receivers with 18 yards apiece, 10 yards. Not a great offensive outing for the Florida Gators. Their defense really, really keeping them in the game for most of the competition. Jake Fromm for Georgia went 17 of 24, 240 yards and 3 touchdowns, having himself a fine day through the air, delivering some really, really good-looking passes. As mentioned, DeAndre Swift, 12 carries for 104 yards and 1 touchdown. He ended up with more yardage. However, it was actually Elijah Holyfield who led the way with 20 carries for 71 yards. Did not realize until this weekend that Elijah Holyfield is, of course, the son of former heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield. That's pretty cool. The Bulldogs spread the ball around a little bit as far as passing numbers go. However, a couple of players stand out as getting a handful of receptions. Isaac Nwata had 5 receptions for 73 yards, a lot of those coming on one particular drive in which the tight end found himself open pretty frequently. Jeremiah Hollerman added 4 catches for 48 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Riley Ridley, 2 catches, 37 yards. The other tight end, Charlie Warner, had 1 35-yard reception, and Terry Godwin had that 1 24-yard touchdown reception for Georgia. Kentucky was able to make a comeback and defeat Missouri 15-14. It was 14-3 at halftime, and Kentucky got 12 fourth-quarter points, including a 67-yard Lynn Bowden Jr. punt return that put them back in the game with just 5 minutes to go. Drew Lock for the Missouri Tigers went 15 of 27 for 165 yards, no touchdowns. Demaria Crockett on the ground, 11 carries, 46 yards, 1 touchdown. Larry Roundtree III, also 14 carries for 45 yards and 1 touchdown. Through the air, of course, the Tigers have been really hampered with injuries in the receiving core. They were led by Jonathan Johnson, a junior out of Memphis, Tennessee, with 4 catches for 71 yards. But behind him, really not the same amount of, or the same faces that you have gotten used to in the Missouri receiving game. Cam Scott, a freshman wide receiver, had 1 catch for 32 yards. But then Demaria Crockett actually had 3 catches for 20 yards. Albert Okwuegbunam, evil cannot stand against him. But the Kentucky Wildcats defense did stand up against him this game around. Only 2 catches for 20 yards. Not a great day for the Tigers against that stout Kentucky defense. Then you flip it over to Kentucky, and oddly enough, Terry Wilson surprising everyone with a good passing game. They let him fling the ball around a little bit, 31 times to be exact, and he completed 22 of them for 267 yards and a touchdown. Did have 1 interception on the day. The other quarterback for the Wildcats, Gunnar Hope, came out, completed 3 of 8 passes for only 27 yards. Benny Snell Jr., 19 rushing attempts for 67 yards. Not his best outing, but that's okay. Wilson got it done. Wilson, however, on the ground, 10 carries for 11 yards. Lynn Bowden Jr. was the star in so many ways for the Kentucky Wildcats. He had 13 receptions for 166 yards to go along with that 67-yard punt touchdown return. My goodness, have yourself a day, Lynn Bowden Jr. David Bouvier added 2 catches for 43 yards. Benny Snell 2 catches for 28. And the Wildcats walked out with that victory. As mentioned, some controversy surrounding a pass interference call that gave them a second chance at a touchdown at the end of the game. But hey, this is just the numbers game. No opinions here, y'all. Mississippi State defeated Texas A&M 28-13 in a game that matched up 2 really good defenses. Let's look at the losing side. Kellen Mond went 23 of 46 for 232 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And that was about it. The Mississippi State defense apparently intimidated Texas A&M to the point where they didn't want to rush the ball very much. Jashawn Corbin only rushed the ball 3 times to lead the way with 33 yards. And their star running back, Travion Williams, only 10 carries for 26 yards. Through the air, of course, you throw the ball around 46 times, you're bound to have some guys catching quite a few passes. Sophomore Courtney Davis had 6 catches for 59 yards and the 1 touchdown that came right at the end of the first half. A very, very nice screen that he was able to take 34 yards to the house for A&M's only touchdown on the day. Hezekiah Jones, the sweetest Texas name I've ever heard, had 5 catches for 51 yards. Travion Williams out of the backfield, 4 catches for 45 yards. And Cameron Buckley, a wide receiver, with 3 catches for 30 yards. On the other side, quarterback Nick Fitzgerald from Mississippi State went 14 of 22 for 241 yards and 2 touchdowns, having probably his best passing outing on the year in a year that has not had many good passing outings for Fitzgerald. He also carried the ball 16 times for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. Most of that yardage coming on a 76-yard touchdown run with 2 minutes to go to ice the game. Aries Williams had 9 carries for 35 yards, and running back Nick Gibson came in for the injured Kylan Hill, 4 carries, 22 yards. Through the air, Stephen Guidry had 3 catches for 130 yards and a touchdown, most of that yardage coming off of a very, very, very long third down pass that he caught and then had a lot of yardage after the catch. Osiris Mitchell had 6 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown, including catching a very impressive jumping over a defender 38-yard touchdown pass. And that's mostly it for the Bulldogs, those 2 really carrying the load. Aries Williams added 1 10-yard reception. Dedrick Thomas had 2 catches for 4 yards. Not a whole lot going on, especially noting Jesse Jackson, 2 catches for only 1 yard. And I mention all of those in particular because I will be putting out a weekly pessimist episode this week. That's a Mississippi State series that we do in which I specifically look at the Mississippi State wide receivers and try to figure out what is going on with them this season. So if you're keeping up with Mississippi State athletics, be on the lookout for that episode coming out this week. Our final matchup, South Carolina defeated Tennessee 27-24. Another hard-fought competition here. At one point, Tennessee was up 21-9 in the third quarter. 8 minutes to go in the third, Rico Dowdle scored from 1 yard out to put the score at 21-16. Tennessee kicked a field goal late in the third to go up 24-16. South Carolina, however, got a touchdown right at the end of the third quarter to tie the game at 24 apiece. Not a whole lot of scoring in the fourth. South Carolina, with 5 minutes, 52 seconds left, were able to get a field goal that ended up being the game-deciding field goal. 27-24 was that final. Jarrett Guarantano for Tennessee went 27 of 39 for 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tim Jordan led the way with 12 rushing attempts for 62 yards. Ty Chandler behind him, 11 attempts for 54 yards. The only rushing touchdown on the day for the Volunteers comes off of a 14-yard run by the most interesting name that I've stumbled across in a while, and I know I'm not going to say it correctly, but I'm just going to go ahead and blindly guess that his name is Carlin Filsaime. That is Fils-Aime. It could be Filsaime. It could be Filsaime. I don't know, but that is an interesting name. And I haven't had much to say about him all season because I don't believe he has had any statistics at all on the year and that is mostly because he is listed as a defensive back and not a running back. So very interesting that he would show up with 3 carries for 20 yards and that 1 touchdown. Weird passing statistics for the Volunteers as well. Marquez Callaway led the way with 9 receptions, 86 yards. But then Chandler and Jordan, the 2 running backs, actually are right behind him. 7 receptions for Chandler, 29 yards, 4 for Jordan for 29 yards. Then there's also another receiver with 29 yards, Josh Palmer. He had 2 catches for 29. After that, Juwan Jennings had 3 catches for 26 yards. He had one of the touchdowns on the day, and Eli Wolf, the tight end, added 1 5-yard touchdown reception as well. South Carolina was led by quarterback Jake Bentley, 11 of 16 passing for 152 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Rico Dowdle had himself a game as well, 14 carries for 140 yards and a touchdown. If you're doing the math, that's a clean 10-yard per carry average. Go ahead, Rico Dowdle. Tyson Williams had 13 carries for 34 yards and 1 touchdown as well. Through the air, most of the yardage went to Brian Edwards. The wide receiver had 3 catches for 96 yards. However, Deebo Samuel had the 1 touchdown reception on the day. He had 3 catches, but for only 8 yards. So that's your rundown of all the scores and, of course, all of the statistics that go along with it. So with that behind us, we should look at the top 25, both the AP and the coaches' polls. Of course, the college playoff poll will not come out until the end of this month, but that will add a little extra dimension to the numbers game. Nothing really changed at the very tops of any of the rankings here. Alabama's still number 1. LSU's still number 4. That's in both polls. Georgia's number 6 in both polls, moving up a spot. Kentucky has moved up to number 11 in the AP poll and number 12 in the coaches poll. That's up 1 spot in the AP, 2 in the coaches. Florida is currently at number 13 in the AP, dropping down 4 spots. They're also at 14 in the coaches poll, dropping down 3 spots. Mississippi State, after their victory over Texas A&M, has bounced back up into the AP top 25. They're in and out every week. Apparently it's a tradition. They are number 21 in both places, unranked last week. Texas A&M holds on to the number 25 spot in the AP poll, a 9-spot drop from where they were. This past week, they are not in the coaches poll any longer. However, they are still receiving 167 coaches poll votes. They're joined in that category by both Auburn with 21 and South Carolina with 11 votes for the coaches poll. Let's look at the players of the week in the SEC. On offense, that's Mississippi State quarterback Nick Fitzgerald. He accounted for 329 total yards of offense and 4 touchdowns, which included that career-long 76-yard touchdown run with 2 minutes to go that sealed the game. As mentioned, the 241 yards on 14 of 22 passing and 2 touchdowns was his best passing outing on the season. It was also his best since he threw for 328 yards as a sophomore against Arkansas. Texas A&M's defense had led the SEC in rush defense and ranked 4th nationally against the run. His 88 yards and 2 scores is notable because that puts him tied with the top spot for rushing touchdowns in a career, 42, along with running back Anthony Dixon. Beloved running back Anthony Dixon, I should say. That Stephen Guidry pass went for 84 yards. That was on a 3rd and 21 play, and it set up Fitzgerald's first rushing touchdown. Jake Fromm is the other offensive player of the week after a 17 of 24 passing day, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's a career high. He had no interceptions, connecting on all 3 of his touchdowns on 3rd downs from 16, 12, and 24 yards out. Florida's defense is good, and Fromm led an offense that piled up 429 yards on his way to connecting with 7 different receivers. So a solid performance from both of those quarterbacks, and that's why they're the co-offensive players of the week. Defensive player of the week is Josh Allen, the linebacker from Kentucky. Career high 11 tackles, including 2 quarterback sacks in that victory over Missouri. Both of his sacks came in the second half, and both of them caused fumbles. The Wildcats did not allow Missouri a first down during the entire second half. That's 8 straight 3-and-outs, making it possible for that comeback victory. They held Missouri to 24.6 points below their average. They averaged 38.6 points a game, limited them to only 14. Along with that, that's 249 yards of total offense, which is 252.1 yards below Missouri's average so far. Allen was named Defensive Player of the Week by the Walter Camp Football Foundation. That's the National Defensive Player of the Week, And he now leads the SEC in sacks, ranking the top 3 nationally. As you'd expect, Lynn Bowden Jr., the punt returner of Kentucky, is the Special Teams Player of the Week. It was his first punt return in his collegiate career, and he took it 67 yards to the house. That's unbelievable. Should be noted, of course, as mentioned, he had career highs on offense with 13 pass receptions for 166 receiving yards. That's a career high 229 all-purpose yards for Lynn Bowden. Have yourself a day. I love it. He gets my vote for Offensive Player of the Week. Forget special teams. The freshman of the week was Dylan Wanham, an offensive lineman from South Carolina. He made his first career start in that victory, grading out at 71%. He became the first true freshman to start on the offensive line since Mike Matulis in 2011. And what's also important about this is that he started at right tackle, and his brother, DJ Wanham, started at buck, whatever that means. I don't know what that means. Why do they word it like that? Anyway, they're the first set of brothers to start for Carolina since the 2014 season when Gerald Dixon and Gerald Dixon Jr. were starters along the defensive line. All right, I'm back. I had to get the dog to be quiet. In case you're curious, by the way, I had to look it up. Gerald Dixon Jr. is the older half-brother to teammate Gerald G. Dixon. So it's half-brothers. That's how they ended up with the exact same name. In fact, Gerald G. Dixon, his full name is Gerald Javoris Kytrell Dixon. And according to GamecocksOnline.com, he goes by Lil G. As noted, their father also happened to play at South Carolina from 1990 to 1991. The offensive lineman of the week was Vanderbilt's Justin Skoll. 3-year starter on the Commodore offensive front. He played in 72 offensive snaps, contributing 2 pancake blocks and allowed 0 hurries or sacks of quarterback Kyle Shermer. He also was the key blocker on all 3 of Keyshawn Vaughn's rushing touchdowns. Keyshawn Vaughn, of course, ended the game with 172 rushing yards, which is the most by Commodore and SEC play since Lou Thomas ran for 173 against Auburn in 2001. Defensive lineman of the week, well, that's DJ Wanham, the defensive lineman from South Carolina that was mentioned earlier. He's a defensive end. That's apparently what buck means. And he had a pair of sacks, including one at the end of the game that stopped Tennessee from moving. It was his first appearance since the season opener. He was battling a foot injury and had not played since. So good for the Wanham brothers for making it into the team of the week in the Southeastern Conference. Let's take a quick look at some of the statistical leaders in the conference before we wrap this episode up. So far on the year, not massive changes in the top 5 as far as passing yardage goes. Jordan Ta'amu of Ole Miss stays on top with 2,622 yards. Drew Lock of Missouri, second place, 2,144. Tua Tagovailoa of Alabama, 2,066. Kyle Shermer's in fourth place with 2,037. And Kellen Mond of Texas A&M's in fifth place, 2,032 yards. The top 5 in terms of passing touchdowns is easy to list out. Tua Tagovailoa is number 1 in the conference with 25 touchdowns. And then there are 4 people tied for second through fifth place right behind him. They each of these quarterbacks have 16 touchdowns on the year. That's Drew Lock of Missouri, Feliepe Franks of Florida, Jake Fromm of Georgia, and Jordan Ta'amu of Ole Miss. Rushing yardage, Benny Snell is still the conference leader, 960 rushing yards so far on the season. Travion Williams of Texas A&M has 824 to be in second place. Scotty Phillips of Ole Miss, 782 in third place. Nick Fitzgerald, the only quarterback in the top 5 of Mississippi State, 732 yards on the season. Nick Brossette of LSU, 697 yards to be in fifth place. Keyshawn Vaughn of Vanderbilt leads the conference in yards per carry with 6.8. Kylan Hill of Mississippi State's right behind him with 6.8 as well, but I assume that's slightly less, 6.8, like 6.81 versus his 6.82 or something. Elijah Holyfield of Georgia has 6.6 yards per carry to be in third place. Rakeem Boyd of Arkansas, Rakeem the Dream, 6.5 yards. Damian Harris of Alabama, 6.4 yards. That's the top 5 there. And at this point in the season, the top 5 in terms of rushing attempts is kind of who you would expect considering who has the rushing yardage. Benny Snell, 179 attempts. Nick Brossette, 151. Travion Williams, 149. Nick Fitzgerald, 137. And Scotty Phillips, 125. Brossette has 10 touchdowns to be top in the conference. Scotty Phillips, Benny Snell, and Nick Fitzgerald are all tied behind him with 9. Keyshawn Vaughn, Joshua Jacobs of Alabama, Larry Roundtree of Missouri, and Travion Williams of Texas A&M behind them with 8. A.J. Brown of Ole Miss still leads the conference in receiving yards with 805. Jerry Jeudy of Alabama, 777. Khalija Lipscomb, Vanderbilt, 632. DK Metcalf of Ole Miss still in the top 5, 569 yards. And DeMarcus Lodge of Ole Miss, 550 yards. Jerry Jeudy with a stupid 25 yards per reception to lead that category, as well as his conference leading, 10 receiving touchdowns. Behind him in receiving touchdowns is his teammate Henry Ruggs III. He has 7. In third place, Khalija Lipscomb of Vanderbilt and tight end Jay Sternberger of Texas A&M are tied with 6 touchdowns apiece. And then there's a slew of players with 5. I'll go ahead and list them all. A.J. Brown of Ole Miss, Jared Pinkney of Vanderbilt, Irv Smith Jr. of Alabama, Freddie Swain of Florida, DK Metcalf of Ole Miss, Debo Samuel of South Carolina, Riley Ridley of Georgia, Brian Edwards of South Carolina, and Albert Okwuegbunam of Missouri. On the defensive side of things, Montez Sweat still has 9 sacks, but Josh Allen of Kentucky and Isaiah Buggs of Alabama are right behind him with 8. Ja'Kai Polite of Florida with 7, and Nick Coe of Auburn in the top 5 now with 6 sacks. Grant Del Pete of Louisiana State has 5 interceptions to lead the way. John Battle of LSU, Darius West of Kentucky, Rashad Fenton of South Carolina, Ryan Pulley of Arkansas, and Savion Smith of Alabama, all with 3 interceptions behind them. As far as passes defended go, DeAndre Baker of Georgia leads the conference with 8. Javaris Davis of Auburn, Christian Fulton of Louisiana State, and Cameron Dantzler of Mississippi State all have 7. Christian Holmes of Missouri, Jarquez McClellan of Arkansas, DeMarcus Acey of Missouri, Noah Igbinoghene of Auburn, and Trayvon Diggs of Alabama all have 6 passes defended as well. We have a new league leader as far as total tackles go. That includes assisted and solo tackles. That's Jordan Griffin of Vanderbilt with 86. He replaces Dijon Harris of Arkansas, who has 82 in second place. Devin White of LSU with 76. Deshaun Davis of Auburn with 72. And Mohamed Sanogo of Ole Miss in 5th place with 65 total tackles on the season. Hey, I think this might be the shortest episode of the Numbers Game that I've produced yet. I'm Joseph Craven. Thank you for listening. And stay tuned. More Running Out the Clock coming out this week. We got our individual team episodes about Ole Miss, Florida, Mississippi State. Hopefully adding more very soon when we add more correspondents to the ROTC lineup. But as for now, this has been the Numbers Game for Week 9 in the SEC. I'm your friend Joseph Craven on behalf of Radar O'Reilly. On behalf of everyone at ROTC, thank you for listening. Young Sheldon is next.